Ladies and gentlemen, cats and dogs.
I was just about to bring up Jay Williams to you, but a couple of things. First of all, this is the Rewatch Ryan YouTube channel now, and this is the Watch Diary podcast. I didn't think anybody would know who Jay is, so I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time talking about somebody that people actually like. That's my mission, is for these people to not know who Jay is, because hopefully I will have acquired more subscribers and new subscribers. So,
okay.
What Sight and Sound? Even though like his like album reviews are still like one of the highest like viewed things on here.
That's right.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm laying in bed. So right now I'm having camera problems with my MacBook.
Right.
And also on my MacBook, I have the Touch Bar MacBook. Number one, it's terrible. If you're out there and you're thinking, oh, the Touch Bar was cool, well, they've already discontinued it because it sucks. It's just another thing to go wrong. And so now it flashes me. Like, from inactivity, if I'm not touching the keyboard or the trackpad, after like 2 minutes, it starts flashing. So when I'm watching a movie, like I watched the movie we're going to talk about today, I watched it on Amazon Prime on my laptop. And the whole time, I had to keep moving the mouse so that thing wouldn't flash me during the film and distract Daddy.
Yeah.
Can't have it.
Well, this is good to know because I'm actually going to start shopping for a MacBook shortly.
MacBook, yeah.
Because I'm about to start school again.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
You're finally going to finish high school.
Yeah, I'm going to finish high school. No, guess what my major is going to be?
Film.
No.
Thank God.
Graphic design.
Oh, okay.
You want to know why?
No.
Because it's a thing. Because it's a thing I already know a ton about.
Okay, but now you're going to learn why. Does that make you excited?
I'm going to learn why?
Yeah.
Am I excited?
Like, do you know anything about like color theory or composition or any of that stuff?
I mean, I guess not. It's like one of those things that like I probably do, but I couldn't like articulate it. Or
yeah.
if somebody explained to me in words why I do certain things with my design work, then I'd be like, oh yeah, I already knew that, but I didn't know that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where like my wife, her degree is in studio fine arts. So she knows the why behind, let's say the why behind the I, right? So like when I'll create something and she'll use a word like make this a little cooler. And I'm like, so like blue? And she's like, well, like this is what it means, and gets into the like nitty gritty of why we do the things we already. So some of the things is like, you can either have a good eye or you don't.
Right.
You can learn better about an eye. But like in all of my graphic design, I'll be like, look how creamy this is. And she's like, that's not what that means. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you, you stinky, filthy.
Whoa. Is she still in the room with you?
Girl. Yeah. And you know what she's doing? I told you off air. She's
Yeah.
evil.
I just heard her chuckle.
Yeah.
I am reminded of how I used to like discuss artwork with Jay, going back to Jay Williams, who used to design all of the Sight and Sound stuff. He'd like ask me to approve a logo or something, and I'd say, I don't know, make it poppy. Is what I used to.
That's
always.
right. That's right.
and I didn't know what, like, just make it pop is what I always would say, and he would never know what that meant, and then he would just do what he was gonna do anyway, and then I'd be like, yeah, that's good. because first of all, I can't see what he sees, so, and he can't understand what I mean when I'm, so it was just this constant frustration on both of our ends, because I would want to articulate. It's kind of like when I talk to Eric and Josh about music, make this part do this, but I'm not really actually saying anything. So they're just like, okay. And so they do what they're gonna do anyway. And even if it doesn't fit my mold, because I couldn't come up with what they came up with, I still love it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're like, give this spot a lot of space, like make it real flowy right here. And then they're like, you're an idiot. You don't deserve breath.
Yeah. I think the only thing I could really articulate is like it needs to be more ambient. Like if I say something needs to be more ambient, I'm confident in what I mean. But
Sure.
if it goes any further than that, I don't know. I guess I could maybe like come up with a breakdown or something, but that's about it because that's easy.
Yeah. To come up with breakdowns, did you ever come up with sayings to like remember them? Like,
No.
because we can all like do breakdowns. Shun-da-da-da-dun, digga-digga-dun, digga-digga-dun, dun, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I used to come up with little like phrases to remember breakdowns, but my buddy did too, and he, this was back in probably early 2000s, but one of the breakdowns that he told me that he remembered was, what is it? It was, shut up, you whore. Won't you shut up, you slut. And I was like, wow, misogyny. He's like, no, dude. Like, I wouldn't. And he's a guy that would never talk like that ever.
Right.
But it was one of those things where, like, that's what stuck in his head. And he would laugh every time he did it. But it's funny.
So that is such like a Cody Pratt, Lee Stratton thing to do. Just like,
Yeah, for sure.
chicken patty, chicken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, guys, this is Watch Diary. Welcome. I'm Ryan Snelling. That's Brando Hall. Brando, do you want to tell the listeners how you disappointed me this week?
Oh, how can I count the ways? I'm guessing I disappointed you by not watching Bahubali 2 yet.
That's correct. That's the main thing for sure. A little upsetting.
Yeah.
No. The other thing too is that you convinced me that it was Bahubali, and I was right when I asked if it was Bahubali.
Okay. Did the 12 listeners who listened to this thing, did they comment on YouTube about it?
No, I just watched part 2 and listened to how they pronounce his name.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm still not sure you're correct because I sat through 3 hours of the first movie.
That's true.
So we'll see. But one of the things I think is fun is that when we do this podcast and then you edit it, which I'm guessing you don't do a lot on the back end before you post it. Like you add maybe an image or a thumbnail, whatever it is that you do. Do you ever watch your old or the videos that you upload?
Old videos that I upload?
Or like, so do you watch them before you post them?
No.
Yeah, never. Now, after you post them, do you watch them?
No.
Yeah, that's right. So I remember a time when you left in a mistake and I had to like text you because I was watching it, but I so rarely, after we record these, I almost never listen.
Oh, yeah. It's as soon as I'm uploaded, I'm done with it
But can you imagine? I guarantee you, John Campia listens to everything he puts out.
I don't think so. I think he has the privilege and ability to like put all of his production stuff on the people that work for him. So I think as soon as he gets up from his desk, it's up to
he has people that work for him.
Yeah, he has several employees. Hey,
that's strange.
He has a personal assistant. Outside of his video production, outside of his YouTube, he has a personal assistant.
For what?
I mean, he's a busy guy.
They must be hemorrhaging money.
They just got this huge deal with Mint Mobile, like a direct partnership, like with Ryan Reynolds. Like Ryan Reynolds retweeted it the other day.
Weird.
The John Camp, yeah. I mean, they have like a huge sponsor after every single segment that they do on that show. It's crazy. And
I've never listened. You tweeted me a take that he had that was stupid.
Oh yeah. So here's the thing about John Campia, is I respect the shit out of him, and it really only comes down to like I've heard a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Like when I worked for Collider at Schmoes, I would hear a lot of things that went on that like the public don't know about. John just crazy stuff. Like, nothing like, insane. Nothing like Army Hammer sucks the blood out of women. Like, nothing like that. But, but just fun stuff to know about John Campea that people don't know about John Campea. But he was like my entryway into this whole thing, and watching what he built when he did, it was AMC Movie Talk and then Collider Movie Talk, like following along with that, like he's the reason why I'm sitting here right now. Him and Christian and Mark, I mean, he's the godfather of all of this. If nobody knows this, I don't know if you know this either, he literally had the domain The Movie Blog. Think of how old you have to have been making stuff on the internet to grab Movie Blog as a domain. You had to be the first one. So it's been that long, and he just passed 300,000 subscribers, and he said it's the first time he's ever done it, and it meant a lot to him too because it was actually his channel. Because before he was always a hired gun, and he just like made Collider's video brand or he made AMC's video brand, but it was never his own. So the fact that he's able to do that, I mean, and plus that's how he does his show is how I model Watch Diary. He does one piece of long form content and then chops it up, and that's the extent of my editing. It's literally just creating the smaller videos, and that's what he does, and that's the model I see fit for my channel as well.
But so from an outside perspective, which I don't know where your listeners are coming from, like who they are. But as a guy on the outs, like I've been close to the movie community because I've podcasted with you and Jay. But I've never listened. I watched like a couple of Schmoedowns out of spite, like, cause you guys were like talking about it like it mattered. And so I wanted to like just know what it was. And so I watched it. So I know, like, I always made fun of like Hat Guy. I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
And then like, they would do like WWE kind of entrances and announcements and whatever. I just thought it was silly goose time. But I remember like in the chat we would laugh about things like Stuckmanized, get Stuckmanized, but what sucks is, so now when I'm going into a movie like say The Witch. Me and my wife rewatched The Witch. It's brilliant still. And I wanted to see some people's take, like if they had like inside, behind the scenes, or like, just more content about it.
Right.
And one of the videos I saw, I think, was Stuckman. And I was like, no, we're not watching that one. And we just looked for another one. Now, I don't even know if Stuckman's good or not, but the Get Stuckmanized has been so like bored into my brain that I can't.
I feel like that's one of those things where like you definitely don't realize that you're gonna age on YouTube, and not to say that, I mean, he has over 1 million subscribers. Like, he is so huge, Chris Stuckman. But
so he's way bigger than Campea.
Yeah, as a film reviewer for sure. But Get Stuckmanized had to be something that he came up with when he was a child. And
but you can drop it.
And now, that's true, but
let the past die.
But it's his brand. Yeah, I mean, those guys, like even John Flickinger, who I follow and I still appreciate to this day. He's always been like my favorite, like solo, like YouTuber, like homegrown YouTuber. I just think he's entertaining, but he talks about all the time how he can't believe how long he's been on YouTube, and at any point he can just go back and watch a video on that same very channel, but like from his childhood, essentially. Like, it's crazy.
I used to watch the Cinefix, maybe? Is that what it was? It was like 10 things you didn't know about.
Yeah, I remember that channel.
Batman vs. Superman or whatever it was, and Film Riot. But that's more like movie production or like, videography, cinematography.
Film Riot is incredible. I haven't watched Film Riot content in a long, long time, but I loved it. I love those guys.
Yeah. And so there's a few of those that I'll watch like regularly. I'm still subscribed, but as in terms of like film review, it's always like movie based, not I have to watch everything they put out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Except you, because you break the cycle, and anything I'm not on, of course I watch immediately of you.
That's right.
As should you, the listener.
That's right. But yeah, the John Campea, like, that's my dream to be able to do what he does, and there's no way that I'll ever get to that point just because. But having just my friends seated around me and talking about whatever we want to talk about is what I've always wanted, and it just looks.
Yeah.
And it's crazy too because I just started watching his show, and I say just, I mean a few months now. I started watching his show because he's got Robert Meyer Burnett, who I believe is like literally one of the best pundits since I've been following Collider. This guy Robert Meyer Burnett has been on all kinds of stuff, and me and Jay used to always talk about how fire he is as a guest host, and so yeah, I just find it like really entertaining, even though like it never goes beyond like I don't have a problem with John Campea really as a person, like he's ridiculous and. But it never goes past like I just kind of roll my eyes as his opinions, but it's not like it's not personal because some of the things he says I'm just like I've just never heard anyone on earth say that, which is what makes Campea and you know it better than everybody thinking the same thing about everything. But like saying that like Russell Crowe is the greatest living actor, I'm just like what? Like that's so random. Or
that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Or Moulin Rouge is in his top 20 films of all time. I'm just like,
he's stupid. What an idiot.
Or he can't watch RRR. It's so crazy to me.
Yeah,
so crazy.
What a dumb take.
But he'll be like, I love DC Super Pets, and I'm just like, I mean. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so weird. It's weird. But anyway, it's not that it's just stuff to laugh at. It's not like I really care that
I'm
much
sure
about
he's a great guy. It's just and again, I know nothing about him other than the tweet that you sent me and we laughed.
Oh, and he deleted it. I love that.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he deleted it. He got
what an idiot.
He got so much shit for it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
good job for once, Twitter.
I wish I knew that you wanted to bring that up because I would have posted it on here. Guys, John Campea didn't watch past 15 minutes of RRR.
Yeah,
and he deleted the tweet.
What a dingus.
So, do you? I know on the topic of like going back and watching videos. So, do you not look at the comments that we get on these Tollywood videos?
No, not unless you like alert me of them.
All right, I'm gonna go through a few of them. First of all,
I'm so excited.
The ones that get my blood boiling more than anything are when I just read, "I agree with Brando."
Heck yeah, let's go.
I hate those.
Those are the best.
I never get comments like that. I agree with what Ryan said. A really great point. Like I don't say anything. People just think I don't say anything on here. It's crazy.
Okay.
Like that one time when somebody was like, "What was the comment I told you about last week?" That was like, oh, during RRR, they were like, I don't even think Ryan watched the movie.
Yeah. That's right.
But the one that I did enjoy, because they kind of called you out, is that they said that you ruined Indian cinema by trying to make it woke.
I did?
Yeah, that was all you.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Sorry, Indian cinema.
They said Indian cinema is not or hasn't been ruined by wokeness like American cinema has. Don't ruin it with your wokeness or something like that.
Then I'm so glad. Yeah, they're wrong. Shut up.
I said, Idiots. That's all Brando, so I like that one.
Heck yeah.
And then someone last night, I deleted the comment because I just couldn't understand it, unfortunately, but they essentially were like, I subscribed to this channel 7 days ago, and now I'm unsubscribed because I think you were just Indian propaganda. And then just like went on this thing that made no sense. And I was like, how am I Indian propaganda? I don't even know what you're talking about. So anyway, I just deleted it.
Yeah.
But it's a whole bunch of and this is like fair to an extent, but they are so it's like a lot of comments that I get all the time. It's not just specific to the Tollywood ones. It's just that people have to comment to essentially just give their opinion because it was like the one thing that we forgot to mention.
Yeah, they love that.
So it's like if me and you forgot to mention one thing about the movie, then they're like, you forgot to talk about this is actually why they painted their hand this way. And once they, you were making fun of the hand paintings.
Yeah, and how bad it was.
And they were like, yeah, but when the two characters put their hands together, it formed a bird. And it's like,
no, it doesn't make the painting good.
I was like, I don't need you to tell me that. Like, those kinds of things are just like...
My son draws the Mandalorian all the time. Just draws pictures of him. Guess how many times I've shared it? Never. But you don't know why? Because they're not great. I mean, they're great for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
But you put that up against, like, I'm taking my wife to see Van Gogh, the Van Gogh art exhibit tomorrow. It's gonna pale in comparison to that. and Cadence has 2 ears.
Yeah.
So simmer down, people. That the hand painting sucked.
But yeah, it's just a lot of like they reiterate things that we already know, but
yeah,
like,
I like it.
They clearly explain the trident formation, and it's like we know that.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of people telling us that we don't understand the culture, which it's like,
yeah, that's absolutely.
Yeah.
We're Kentucky boys.
But it's
okay.
But like that's the whole point of us watching it.
That's right.
And that's the whole point of me making the videos where we like go through the comments, and it's the whole reason why we're talking this stuff out, and we're like trying to give we do have our like prism, like the way that you went through the wokeness prism or whatever you want to say about it, and then applied it to like we're reacting to something and reviewing something based on our point of view. Like that's
right.
that's all that we have, and the fact that we don't know every single little thing about behind the scenes of the movie and how it got made and this and that, when it's like we don't need to know that, and it also just doesn't change our initial reaction to these things
or experience. Hey, my experience is valid. Okay, it's my truth.
It's just so weird. Like I have no problem with comments just like telling us like, hey, like. I heard you mention that you didn't know this, like this, all that kind of stuff is good, and that's why I go through them, and I like exploring that kind of stuff. But the reasons why they think that like we're just like out of our minds stupid about things, or that we can't have a proper opinion or review, it's like, stop it.
Did you hear that fart I just put in the microphone?
I did hear it.
That's who we are. Okay, if you're out there watching, that's who we are. That's who I am. And that's who Ryan has chosen to talk about Indian cinema with.
Yeah.
So maybe calm down on your comments, okay? I just farted into a microphone.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention real quick before we get to talking about 13 Lives is the comment. They said, I think you're only doing this for clicks. Yes, I am.
Yeah. Hello.
And guess what? Newsflash. Every single person, every single YouTube account that you watch does it for clicks.
That's right. 1,000%.
But that doesn't mean that the things I say are fabricated or disingenuous. It doesn't mean that my actual opinion isn't coming out of my mouth. Am I doing this for clicks? 100%. Does it always work? No. My She-Hulk review, for whatever reason, barely broke 10 views. I don't know how YouTube works, but I'm doing it for clicks. You're right.
Yeah, everyone is. Or we would, guess what? We just have these conversations away from microphones in video.
And I promise you, it's not worth it.
That's right.
Like, literally, I put out my early out of the theater reaction to the movie Beast that I am going to review later after Brando gets off. It has 14 views.
That's right.
Not worth it. I had to make a thumbnail. That's the amount of work I put into it, and not worth it. But there you go, guys. That's why I'm doing this.
It's a labor of love.
That's right. So anyway, do you have I guess before we hop off here, do you have anything have you thought about, or are you excited about watching Bahubali Part 2, which, guys, we are going to cover next week if you didn't.
That's right. Yeah, I'm super excited to watch it. It's one of those things now where I know what to expect a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty much an expert on Tollywood after this will be my third Tollywood film.
That's right.
All by the same director, by the way. But no, I am super excited. I've tried so hard to not watch any of the trailers, any of the like spoilers. You know, when I was looking up information about Bahubali 1 or Bahubali, I would see some like spoilery things for number 2 and tried my hardest to not like get caught in those holes of just chasing those down, because I want to be surprised and I know nothing about it, so I'm going to be. And then after I watch the movie, I always will go and just search a few things to, you know, make sure I'm not going in totally ignorant, just mostly. Just like I want to go in 80% ignorant to these conversations where we lay out definitive how people should think about these films. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm really excited.
You know what else I was thinking about too, and I wish I knew more about it, but I'm gonna slowly but surely start to like think about this more and more and talk about it on air. But there was something that was mentioned where they were like, the American way of making films is not the same way of Indian, you know, talking about the musical numbers and stuff like that. And because I think I made the point that like you would never put a musical number in a flashback. And they were talking about how like it's just exactly what they would do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are so many examples, and I don't know how to prove it to that audience, but there's also a lot of things, like a lot of American filmmaking sensibilities that should and could make some of their stuff better.
Well, I'm not going to say that.
Well, I'm like just a simple like storytelling technique. That's all I'm saying. I'm not talking about changing the culture. I'm not talking about changing musical numbers. But like, I don't know. There's got to be something that's like, you know what? You know, actually having a proactive protagonist is better than having like a reactive protagonist. Just like something like that.
I think, but I also think American movies could learn a lot from Tollywood in the risks that they take.
100%. And based on the people that have been watching our channel, when I said that, basically what they heard is, I want to change everything about Indian cinema from the ground up. That's what they heard. It's not what I meant. It's not what I said, but that's what they heard. I'm just saying there could be something.
Sure. Something
that they take from us. But on the other hand, so that I don't get another comment, I agree with Brando and not Ryan. I think that American cinema needs to pull more Indian filmmakers over here. Like the way that we kind of stole Bong Joon-ho from South Korea. we have got to, like, honestly, the director, is it S.S. Rajamouli? Something, I don't know how to pronounce it. But like he 100% needs to meet up with the John Wick guys or the Marvel guys, like 100%. Like, we need Tollywood influence in America filmmaking. 100% we do.
And then we can stop doing things like, what was that movie? John Carter. No more John Carter. Like, if the director of RRR did John Carter, it would have been a better movie.
You know what? I agree. I agree with that.
It would have been.
All right, Brando. Let's talk about this Ron Howard Prime Video based on a true story film, 13 Lives. Did you know about this movie prior to me texting you about it?
Never had heard of it.
Okay.
In fact, I am so out of touch that I don't really remember this story coming out. Now, to make it worse, here's what's worse. I may have even heard about this when it was happening, and it left my mind. When did this happen? 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah, Trump was president, okay? So that we had our own problems. And so I don't know that I like gave it any attention at all.
I'm not going to lie, and I say this in the most respectful way possible. I feel like I lose track of my people being trapped in cave stories.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Was that really that bad?
Yeah.
Was it?
Oh,
isn't that
people? Just let Ryan know in the comments of this YouTube video about his ignorance.
It's just part of it. You know, there's always I'm gonna stop.
No, I love it. There's always someone stuck in a cave. Oh,
This
anyway.
could have been any one of those stories.
That's right. Yeah. What I do think immediately, because we've been talking about Tollywood in the past couple weeks,
Yeah.
and I did wonder as soon as this movie started, I wondered, what would they have done with this story, and how much more entertaining would it have been if this was a Tollywood movie? I mean, the songs alone would have been incredible. Anyway, so yeah, I didn't know anything about it. I saw that Opie directed it, old Ronnie Howard,
That's right.
and so I was in. I liked Apollo 13.
I was gonna say, when I gave you this assignment, were you excited because you had never heard about it? Because I think you are a guy that likes to not go in. You like to go in blind to things.
Mm-hmm.
So were you excited, or was it a chore?
So
Yeah.
for this, because I didn't know what it was on, I when I found out it was on Amazon Prime, I was immediately like, which isn't fair because they made The Boys, and I love that. And then I saw Ron Howard's name was attached, and I was like, okay, this will probably be good. But then I looked through the names of the stars in the film: Colin Farrell, nah, Viggo Mortensen, nah, and Joel Edgerton. Whatever. See, that's how little he matters. And so when I saw those three names, I was like, oh, so it's not a star-studded cast here. Viggo was great in A History of Violence. Like, that's a cool movie or whatever.
Okay, first of all, hold on. Before you do this thing, what you're doing, which is going to be infinitely worse than my cave tragedy take.
I don't think so.
These are all fantastic actors.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And did you watch that movie Hillbilly Elegy on Netflix?
No, but I read the book.
So Ron Howard directed that, and it's got Amy Adams, and it was Glenn Close, I think, and it's on Netflix. And apparently that thing was just absolutely atrocious. Like, it was like, how could Ron Howard do this? Like, it was like a crime against humanity, how bad it was. And I think it was even nominated for an Oscar, and people were just like, what the hell is going on here? It has a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, this last movie.
What I heard about it was that it was like a poverty porn. And like what it did was it made people in the South look even worse than they are. But here's what I want to say to those critics.
Yeah.
It's not worse. I've not seen the movie. There's no way it can be worse than what how it can really be. In Breathitt County, in Jackson, in real eastern Kentucky.
Right.
Like, that is where they gave babies Mountain Dew instead of formula because it was cheaper. That is where, like, there are some atrocious things that happen in eastern Kentucky. Now, there's some great things that happen there, too. But to act like that part of our society does not exist is not fair. And if you've never been there, then don't say it doesn't exist or that it's like exploitative. It's not. Again, I need to watch the movie if I'm going to be able to back these words up, and I'll get around to it within the next 5 years. But yeah, I'm really excited about watching a movie that has 25% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
Has Rotten Tomatoes ever gotten it wrong?
Oh, plenty of times.
Okay, name a movie that Rotten Tomatoes hates that you think is good.
Hold on, I'm gonna look this up. First of all, Rotten Tomatoes has a podcast called Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong, because
Heck yeah.
film fandom doesn't know how Rotten Tomatoes actually works. But yeah, I think the biggest issue is that they put SWAT at a 48%.
Never seen it.
Speaking of Colin Farrell. Anyway, so I'm like you, like I just heard that it was filmed wonderfully, this movie.
Yeah.
I heard that it was actually pretty good, and all of this was based on like a streaming standard. Like, for a streaming movie, this is pretty good. It was shot well, made by Ron Howard. Nobody was like roasting it the way that they roasted Hillbilly Elegy. And as it stands right now, and this movie has been out for a few weeks, so we're a little late to it. But as of right now on the Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 88%. So
It's pretty good.
It is pretty good. And I think that it might be a little generous, but but we'll talk more about that. So yeah, let's just go. Let's dive in
Yeah.
and talk about this movie. So you watched it on a MacBook?
I did. I watch almost all of the movies on MacBook with good headphones.
So did you feel the intensity and the drama that way with this
I
movie?
cried. For sure I cried.
Wow.
Now,
You cried.
here's what I will say. Just going into it, like overall reaction, I'm going to relate this to my kids because, of
All right.
course, I'm a dad. You don't have kids yet that you know of. Well, I guess you have to have sex to have kids, so you don't have any kids.
That's
But
Well, a hot tub.
there was a couple scenes in it where I'm relating. Like, I don't identify with children in film anymore. I just don't. I always think about my kids. And so when I thought about how my son would be reacting, the 9-year-old, the 4-year-old would be dead. I mean, he'd already be dead. But the 9-year-old, Cadence, I just think about how he would have felt and how scared he would have been. And they played some of those big moments well. But overall, this movie to me felt much more like Spotlight than it did like
Yes.
a Apollo 13 movie.
I agree.
In that it was realistic in ways. It was more like, I don't know. That's just how it felt. It felt like the beats happened organically, it didn't feel too dramatized to me. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so Spotlight is what I kept thinking, like, you know, the cinematography was great, but it was like everything was normal looking. Like they didn't go out of their way to make certain scenes look, you know, it didn't look like a David Finch movie or, you know, the color grading of it wasn't like over the top. It felt real. It was grounded, I think is the best word to use for the way this felt to me.
Yes.
So I was looking for a little more, you know, a little more drama, but it certainly still had its moments.
Yes, to our listeners, you did just hear Brando say David Finch. I
Is that right?
David Fincher.
Yeah, you know what I meant. That shows what I know.
So I agree. The thing about Spotlight is that, and I agree 100% with what you said. And so how I felt about Spotlight also is how I feel about this movie, in that it's so much about the thing, which is that these kids are trapped, or it's about exposing the Catholic Church. There's very little room for character development.
Yes.
And I think what it was missing, because I think that would have added a little bit to the stakes. I was also comparing it to movies that, like, you wouldn't think I would compare this to, which is like Unstoppable. Have you seen Unstoppable with Denzel and Chris Pine, the train movie?
No.
Like, that is an urgent, fictitious, though urgent, and the stakes are there. You know, two guys trying to prevent this awful thing from happening to this town and this community, and it's rousing, and it has urgency, it has stakes, and I felt like it was missing some of that. But there were stakes because it was real, but there weren't like any cinematic things that were upping the ante, if that makes sense. So like,
Yeah.
you're 100% right, but I wish I was a little bit more involved. And I wish,
Sure.
I felt like it didn't, I was missing like an element of like obsession, or missing an element of, I don't know, just who these guys were in general. Because like Joel Edgerton comes in, you have this great actor who I love from Warrior. He comes in, and it's, you know, as soon as they reveal what their plan is, I mean, my heart stopped. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So like, of course, there were natural elements to the story that made me ask, like, how are we gonna do this? But it wasn't as involved as I had hoped.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how lasting a movie like that is for me personally, but I did really appreciate it for what it was.
Yeah, like they hardly spent any time with the kids. So calling it 13 Lives is a little strange. They should have called it The Heroic Journey of 4 White Men. Because there was a little white savior-y complex in the movie, which it's based on real things. So, the criticism that this is another like white savior movie where white people come in and save the day, that happens all the time in cinema. Like, obviously, we've talked about it a little bit in the past few weeks when we've been podcasting, but so I picked up on that immediately. I'm like, okay, you're telling me that none of these it wasn't Thailand, right?
I don't. Can I stop you here though? Like,
Yeah.
what is the point of saying that if this movie just told a true story?
Because they made the movie. So this isn't the first movie made about this whole stuff. Like, there's a great documentary about it too, I hear, called The Rescue, that I can't wait to watch. It's real footage. But I think what I'm getting at is how I felt in the beginning of the movie when the movie started, and I see what could be collectively called the most the most mistreated men in Hollywood. Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell. If Jeremy Renner would have showed up, my God, it would have rounded the whole thing out. But when they showed up, and then they're talking to the SEALs that are there, and they're like, "Yeah, you guys are good, but us old guys are going to fix this." So there was a little bit of that almost derailed me. I was almost like,
I can't, like, it was literally about the fact that they were experienced cave divers. And
no, I know, we get there.
Okay.
But I'm saying Hollywood loves to highlight stories and films about white people saving the day. They do. And so there was a little bit of that. But then when, doing some research, you realize that this really happened. These dudes were British. So it's not like American saviorism. But it was just something that, like, I'm sensitive to as I watch films. So, but I watched it, and immediately within the first, 30 minutes, I'm thinking, they're spending no time with how these kids feel in there. So there's no time spent with just the kids,
right,
and their conversations in that cavern, or in that cave. And I wish there would have been more of that. Like, what, did any of them get in fights? How scared were they? Did they try to eat each other? All the things that you want to know with a good cave story, right, Ryan?
It's crazy how, at the same time, though, I agree with you, but my stomach would kind of churn every time they would reveal a day change. And all of a sudden, you would just be like, day 8. And it's like, holy shit, this takes so long to figure out. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, think about how long it took for the divers to just go one way. I mean, it was literally what, a 12-hour trip to and fro. So what, 6 hours?
Yeah.
Just knowing you wake up, well, I gotta swim 6 hours into this cave. That's got to be exhausting.
So here's the sad part. If it were me, I can't fit in those spaces anyway, so I'm not going. No one's asking me. But, I mean, nobody was ever like, hey, guys, we could die doing this. And what if these kids brought to society? What have these kids ever done? No. Because I didn't know the story, I was ignorant of the story. When I heard that they were going to put these kids under with anesthesia, I was like, what? They're gonna put these kids to sleep and swim them out? What the hell? And so because I didn't know the story, it was shocking. I thought Joel Edgerton did a great job in this movie. And the whole, hey, him? He's the #1 swimmer. You don't have anything to worry about. That whole that's what I mean when it felt so grounded to me. And Viggo Mortensen being like, I've met people who don't have that empathy or care within them, and they just are matter-of-fact people.
But I appreciated that. I think that's another one of those elements that I think I that was one of the few things that did keep me involved, was the dynamic between him and Colin Farrell, because he was just saying everything that we were actually thinking. It's like, I know you were joking, but you were like, what do these kids actually bring to the table? Like,
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
I feel like we needed someone there, but also the fact that, you do have that brief moment with him at the end where he's satisfied and relieved that they made it all out, and he does have a smile on his face, and he knows that he did a good job and stuff. But like, I do think like those kind of people are important, as long as he's on the mission and helping and has his expertise. Like, him thinking that, I feel like that's helpful in a weird way.
And then in the end of the movie, when you see him just come home and start to make coffee in his messy bachelor pad, as opposed to Colin Farrell coming home and the first thing he wants to do is hug his son.
Right.
So that went to play into their character dynamics
100%.
and, who they were. But I also was stupidly thought when they first got to the kids, I'm like, oh, now you can just swim the kids out.
Yeah.
Even though we had just seen that, like, one guy freak out underwater and kill himself, right? Or get killed by the caves, as they want to do.
And this speaks to the true story as well. I cannot believe nothing happened to a single kid.
I know. I don't believe it.
Imagine, they just put like a body double in.
That's right.
In Thailand, there's just fake kids.
Are you just going to believe it? I mean, people believe that make conspiracy theories about everything from like the Parkland shootings to whatever. So I'm surprised like Alex Jones ever was like, oh, that ain't them real kids. The frogs turned the water gay and those kids died.
Can you imagine keeping a kid alive underwater for 7 hours?
I'm a father of 2.
Yeah.
I'm amazed every day that my kids are still breathing.
Yeah.
And we're on dry land. I mean, come on. No, that's terrifying. And knowing that, like, once you're in the thick of it, if something goes wrong, they're screwed. So everything had to go right for 6 hours one way. And that's without carrying a body.
Right.
So carrying a body, it had to be like 8 hours. And just the, they had a few checkpoints and stuff. And I thought there was a moment in the film when the character Chris lost hold of the rope and started doubting himself. And so Joel Edgerton's character carried him the rest of the way. And that moment is the only moment where it was one of the only moments of like terror or a character self-reflecting in the movie, but it still didn't have the weight that it could have. So I thought in that moment they could have played that up even more than they did, even though like you see him cry at the end of the movie or whatever. And they spend a good deal of time with him. That moment could have hit way harder if they would have dealt with it a little differently. If they would have given that more emotion rather than just here's what happened,
Yeah. So, yeah, I think to sum up, like, conceptually, everything is there. I mean, this true story, it's incredible. It's ripe for movies and cinema, and that's all there. And I still respect the shit out of it because I think it's better than most streaming movies that exist. So
that's right.
But yeah, I just wish there was a little bit more to the characters. But and yeah, I think I would have loved more. I would have loved to have heard more about like the aftermath of what these guys faced because they drugged the kids. Like I'm really interested to know how that was received in the public because, like I said, I don't know anything about the story, so I wish they kind of followed. I wasn't really like dialed in as to who knew and who didn't. I figured it was like a need to know basis, but there were also like 100 guys at the entrance of the cave. So I was like waiting for the moment where like the medics were like, why are all these kids unconscious? Like I didn't quite follow who knew what.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew a little bit more about that, but
and with how bad they were at keeping the fact that how bad they were at saying that the kids were alive, like keeping that a secret, there's no way they would have kept the anesthesia a secret.
That's true. I mean, yeah, that's a great point. That was unevenly
what we've
told.
learned, A, Don't let your kids play in caves. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's
Never.
They were also terrible at hiding the fact that they were injecting a kid from the other kids. Like,
right.
It was only one time when the kids were looking away. Every other time, the kids were just watching everybody get fucking dosed.
That's right. And none of the kids cried, which has not been my experience with kids getting shots.
What American kids, I mean, but they're not nearly as strong, I'm assuming. So,
well, I don't know, so here was another terrible thought. Those kids were already skinny going in those caves.
Yeah.
9 days without food. And how would you be, Ryan Snelling?
I don't know. I mean, if Gandhi can fast for 30 days, I mean, like, that's what I was thinking about. I was like, I've heard of, like, Gandhi fasting for 30 days at a time, and I don't know how that's humanly possible. I don't know how those kids are alive. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so when we saw them again, and they were like, that one kid pulled up his shirt and was like, hungry. I was like, dear God, these children were already so, skinny. And then what would 9 days to me, I would probably drop a couple pounds, right? I mean, my body has enough to feed on for a while. But those kids, you would think if they don't have lunch by 2 p.m., those kids are in some trouble.
Like you said before, I think the anxiety of the kids waiting there and the anxiety of the coach, like that was an interesting moment. What the hell is going on in that coach's mind? The fact that he has to stay strong for himself, but also for 13 children, and that was an incredible angle that was not explored.
Well, here's a little creepy. Okay, it's a little creepy that a grown man goes with a bunch of kids into a cave. That is creepy. When it's not been, there's no permission slip signed.
You put it like this, sure, but
no, it is. Like, I know they didn't play it this way, and he was afraid they would blame him. In America, 1,000% they're blaming him. Right? How could this man take these kids? What did you do to those kids when you were in there? And all that's fair. Don't, if you're a coach and you're having practice, after practice, you are not allowed to take those kids or go with those kids or accompany those kids to a cave. You can't do it. But I thought, like, at the beginning of the film when the one kid's like, ha, he got a SpongeBob cake. That's for a baby. I thought, heck yeah. Hell yeah, I'm in here for this. Like, make fun of each other. I wanted imagine if this would have been handled like Super 8 or just in terms of the kids or It. Right, where you get the kids' perspectives and they're like making fun of them. There's the one mean kid who changes his tune at the end or whatever. I wish we would have gotten some more of that.
A movie that, and I hate to compare it, and these are our final thoughts because my clothes are dried and I have to go to the laundromat. I wish this movie was a little bit more like a movie called Only the Brave, which I watched earlier this year for the very first time. Now, Only the Brave, I think you would dig a lot.
Okay.
So it's about these wildfires that a few years ago really impacted the state of Arizona.
Yeah.
And it takes place right outside where I live. Like, I literally recognize so much of it's in the movie. It's directed by Joseph Kosinski, who directed Top Gun Maverick. And
he was great in The Office.
I think you should watch it. It's incredible. It's got Josh Brolin, Miles Teller.
Here's the reason. Here's the reason I won't watch that film. The exact way you felt about the caves is how I feel about wildfires. It's like, how many times can I care about wildfires in California?
That's right.
I do care, and it sucks. And if you're in California, move. But it's it's just one of those things where, like, movies, like, you hear, the wildfires are terrible again. The wildfires are still burning. It's like, yeah, it's what they do out there now.
Do you remember when
a cigarette?
Do you remember
butterfly effect?
Do you remember when Trump was on the news and he visited the national parks and he said that all of the forests were catching on fire because the floors weren't raked?
Oh yeah. Imagine if that's what it was.
Okay. All right. Final thoughts on 13 Lives before I kick you out.
Yeah, I think it is a fine movie. Fine is how I would describe it. It took me on a journey. I don't think it's a bad movie. But much like Spotlight, which I loved Spotlight, I think it suffers from a little bit of that like realism over sensationalism or realism over entertainment, maybe because it was so recent of an event or whatever. But it's a solid movie, and it's worth a watch. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again.
I don't either. It's pretty long.
It's like 2.5 hours.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I think we mostly agree. So, guys, there's our review of 13 Lives. I'm going to kick Brando off of here, and I'm going to go solo and review the movie Beast, starring Idris Elba. Brando.
What movie is better, 13 Lives or 13 Ghosts?
Oh, I haven't seen 13 Ghosts in
It's the sequel
20 years.
to this
Yeah,
movie.
that's right. Next week, we doing Bahubali Part 2?
Bahubali 2.
Yeah. All right. See you then. Bye, Brando.
Bye.
All right, guys, let's finish off here with the review for Beast. It's the brand new film in theaters starring Idris Elba, directed by Baltazar Kormakur. I probably butchered that name, but it's all good. Right now, at the time of this review, it sits at a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, 71% audience score. I did my early reaction on the channel yesterday when I got out of the theater, and I was kind of surprised. You know, those reactions are getting shorter and briefer, but I kind of couldn't believe how much more I had to say about this movie, and I'm excited to do this real quick. So, yes, Beast. Beast was like the movie, it was the sign that the summer blockbuster season was kind of over, and this is the kind of movie that you're left with. You know, not a lot of people were in the theaters, not a lot of people are talking about this movie. It's easy to write off. I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed the theatrical experience of this. So I sat like in the front row of a big Cinemark theater, not the very front row, the front row of like the second auditorium seating. And I just had fun with how punchy this movie was and how like genuinely scary the lion was. I kind of couldn't believe it because when I watched the trailers, it just seemed like Idris Elba was keeping his family away from a CGI lion. You know, that's kind of all that I got from it. It reminded me of the Blake Lively shark movie. And, you know, I just didn't know what we could do with it and how interesting it could possibly be. I was blown away by one of the early shots between Charlton Copley and one of the lions, and I could not figure out if it was real or fake, or a blend of both. Ultimately, it had to be fake. There's no way that it was real. There's no way that Charlton Copley as an actor is really gonna, you know, go face to face with a lion the way that he did. I could not believe how realistic the lion looked in this particular scene. And there was actually a pride of lions. And the visual effects, I mean, didn't miss a beat. It looked terrific. And I thought about the Lion King movie. We're finally getting the good stuff. You know, The Lion King by Jon Favreau, I think it's going to go down in history as one of those movies that literally was just made, just exists to advance visual effects technology. But it's not going to be a lasting movie. But also, like, this is what animals can look like from now on. And that's what it reminded me of. In fact, a lot of the lions even looked better. Because the Lion King design still is, like, not quite realistic. It just looks realistic texture-wise. But, like, some of the design work and the fact that they're still talking, of course, in that movie, it kind of gives away that uncanny valley feeling. But these were really good-looking lions. Like, I was shocked at how good the visual effects were for these creatures. It was fantastic, seamless. A lot of the interaction, you know, there's scenes where, like, the humans touch the animals, and it was just so realistic. So, shout out to them for making realistic lions. And I genuinely was scared in moments. I thought the lion, it packed a punch, it was loud, it was ferocious, and it just really, really worked. The movie worked when it was all about the lion and all about the creature. The movie didn't work when it was about the characters. Because it's one of those things, it's one of those horror tropes where you have to give the audience a little something. But ultimately, you still don't really care. You know, Idris Elba's character, he's shepherding along his two daughters, and they are in Africa where his wife is from, I believe. So they meet up with an old friend in Charlton Copley, and he's kind of taking them around. He's a, I think what we're led to believe is that he's a game warden, but it kind of becomes something else. And that's really just to justify why we're there fighting a lion in the first place. You don't really care. There's not a whole lot going on with the characters other than the backstory. And it's just a trope in horror. It's just how we get to where we need to be, which is fighting a lion. So the human stuff doesn't work at all. When you're following the decision making, I mean, it's a classic horror movie type thing where you just get so frustrated at how dumb. And also it's got like there's this element that you get primarily with found footage movies where characters are constantly just talking out of anxiety, like, oh, what are we doing? What are we doing? Look at this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like a lot of like stream of consciousness, like just blurting out things and panic. And while it might be realistic, it's not quite like cinematic. It doesn't come across, it just is cringy. It's almost like too real. And sometimes I feel like you have to like be a movie about it. Like you have to do the thing where you hang up the phone without saying goodbye. Like you have to put in a little like movie, like for the sake of a movie kind of thing. And when it came to the panicky dialogue, they didn't do any of that whatsoever. So it just comes off as cringe. And it's already like characters that you don't really care about. Like you just want to see them fight the lion. So the movie is just firing on all cylinders when it's about the lion. And it's annoying and basic when it comes to the human work. So the lion stuff was fun to watch in theaters. But ultimately, like, even the poster is kind of like a false promise because Idris Elba, based on the poster, is going face to face with the lion. You think he's going to be like going to a place that's like in his element. It kind of deflates quickly when Idris Elba actually goes up against the lion, and it was kind of disappointing to see. But yeah, it was scary. I kind of couldn't believe it, but there were good elements to praise, and ultimately a basic movie. And so that's unfortunate, but it was at least fun to watch in theaters. I never need to see this movie again. I never need to recommend it to anybody. I commend the director for sure for giving me an interesting movie to look at, without a doubt. And but yeah, there wasn't even anything particularly interesting about like Idris Elba's character or the fact that he was cast. I just, the human stuff just didn't nail it. But it's a short and sweet hour-and-a-half movie. If you're just looking for a movie to go see, you might like it. But that's about all I got. It's not a lasting film. Some stuff really, really works well. Some stuff doesn't matter at all. So that's it. That's my review of Beast. The last thing I want to say, that's actually not the review of Beast. One thing I will say about the filmmaking, a lot of continuous shots. Now, of course, they were like stitched together, like a Birdman effect. I could see, and that's fine. I could see where one shots were actually stitched together from multiple shots. But what I will say is that it actually worked, and it really added to the fear and horror element of it, because there were certain scenes where you were like in a abandoned African school, for example, and you didn't know what was around every corner. So the fact that the camera had the same sort of line of view as a human being does, where you can't quite see what's around the corner until you get around the corner, and it might be too late and something could jump out at you. That really, really worked. That added to the POV of it. And so the one shots were done really, really well. There were some shots that like I kind of couldn't believe that they were one takes, because a lot of dialogue, a lot of blocking, there was a lot of rehearsal that probably had to go into a lot of these things, and I really commend it for that too. So great job on the continuous shots. It wasn't action based, but it was horror based, so I appreciate that. Anyway, that's my review of Beast, and this is it for Watch Diary. I hope you guys had a good time. They're not the highest profile movies this week, but it's all good. Sometimes you get these weeks, and sometimes you need to give some of these movies love too. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Rewatch Ryan, also on Letterboxd and TikTok at Rewatch Ryan. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Me and Brando will be back next week to review Bahubali Part 2. which I've watched and I was ready to review, but Brando always has to disappoint me. Oh, I'm just kidding. I love Brando, and he does a lot for this podcast. And what else comes out? The John Boyega movie Breaking. I don't know if it's going to be in theaters next week in my area. We also have the movie Samaritan starring Sylvester Stallone, which is on Prime Video. So again, some smaller movies, but they need some love, and we'll be here for them. Guys, thank you so much, and I will see you next week on Watch Diary.